There is a moment in certain connections that feels confusing, almost contradictory. Someone pulls away, becomes quieter, maybe even distant. Their messages slow down, their tone becomes careful, and then suddenly they say something simple, something that sounds casual on the surface. Maybe they say, "I just need some space," or "things are getting a little intense," and in that moment it can feel like the connection is slipping away. But what most people don't realize is that sometimes when an avoidant says words like these, the opposite of what you fear is actually happening. Instead of losing interest, they may be experiencing something far more powerful than they expected. Something that makes them uncomfortable, precisely because it matters so much. Because for someone who is used to emotional distance, feeling deeply can feel almost like losing control. And when that happens, their instinct isn't always to move closer. Their instinct is often to step back, to slow things down, to create breathing room for emotions they don't yet understand. What makes this even more confusing is that the words they use can sound like rejection, even when their inner world is full of thoughts about you, full of questions about you, full of feelings they never expected to feel. And that's why sometimes the most revealing moment in an avoidant connection is not when they openly express love or attachment. It's when they say something that sounds like distance, but is actually the beginning of emotional obsession. Because the truth is, people who are comfortable with emotions don't panic when connection deepens. But people who are used to protecting themselves from closeness react very differently. When they start to feel something real, something meaningful, something that touches parts of them they usually keep hidden, their mind immediately tries to regain balance. It tries to slow everything down before the feelings become too powerful to ignore. So when they say certain phrases, it isn't always about leaving. Sometimes it's about managing the intensity of what they're beginning to feel. For someone who lives with an avoidant pattern, admitting feelings directly can feel like standing in the middle of a storm without protection. Vulnerability is not something they learn to express easily. In many cases, emotional openness feels unfamiliar, even risky. So instead of saying, "I'm starting to care about you more than I expected," they might say something completely different, something that sounds neutral or even distant. Their language becomes indirect. Their words carry hidden meanings. And unless you understand the psychology behind it, it's easy to misinterpret what's really happening. Because when emotions start to grow stronger inside an avoidant person, their mind often activates protective habits that have been there for years. These habits aren't about hurting someone intentionally. They're about maintaining emotional safety. They learned early in life that staying self-reliant, emotionally independent, and somewhat distant helped them avoid disappointment, conflict, or vulnerability. Over time, that way of coping becomes automatic. So when someone new enters their life and begins to create a connection that feels deeper than usual, something inside them becomes alert. Their feelings are growing, but their instincts are telling them to slow down. This is the quiet paradox of avoidant attachment. The stronger the connection feels, the more their protective system activates, and instead of expressing excitement about the connection, they may start speaking more carefully. They may start creating emotional space in their words. Yet at the same time, their mind begins thinking about you more often than they would ever admit. They replay conversations. They notice small details about you. They remember things you said days or weeks ago. Their curiosity about you grows quietly in the background, even while their actions appear calm or detached on the surface. One of the most misunderstood phrases in these moments is when they say something like, "I just need some space." For many people hearing those words, it immediately feels like the beginning of the end. It sounds like withdrawal. It sounds like emotional distance. It sounds like someone preparing to walk away. But within avoidant psychology, that phrase can sometimes mean something very different. Space is often their way of regulating emotional intensity. When feelings become stronger than they expected, their nervous system responds by creating distance so they can process what's happening internally. Imagine someone who has spent most of their life feeling emotionally independent, suddenly experiencing a connection that makes them think about another person constantly. That shift can feel overwhelming. It can feel unfamiliar. It can even feel frightening in a quiet way. Because strong attachment brings with it the possibility of vulnerability. And vulnerability means someone else has the power to affect your emotions. For someone who is used to protecting their independence, that realization can trigger a need to step back temporarily. So when they say they need space, it isn't always because they want to forget about you. Sometimes it's because their mind is trying to catch up with feelings that arrived faster than expected. In those quiet moments of distance, something surprising often happens. Instead of thinking about you less, they often start thinking about you more. Distance creates reflection, it creates awareness, it gives them time to notice how much your presence has begun to matter in their life. This is why emotional overload can look like emotional withdrawal. When a connection becomes powerful, most people instinctively move closer. But someone with avoidant tendencies may do the opposite. They create space not because they feel nothing, but because they feel too much. Their emotions are intensifying faster than their comfort level allows, so they slow the situation down to regain balance. During this time, they may appear calm on the outside, but internally, there is often a quiet storm of thoughts and emotions forming. They may start questioning why this connection feels different from others. They may notice that they think about you at unexpected times during the day. Small reminders of you begin to appear everywhere. A song, a place, a memory, from a conversation. Even when they try to focus on other things, their mind returns to you. And this realization can be both fascinating and unsettling for them. Because avoidant individuals are used to being emotionally self-contained. They are used to feeling in control of their independence. But when someone begins to occupy their thoughts in a consistent way, that sense of control starts to shift. Suddenly, they're aware that this connection has entered deeper parts of their mind, and the more they try to analyze it, the more present you become in their thoughts. This is often the stage where their behavior becomes confusing to the outside world. One moment they seem warm and engaged, another moment they appear distant, but underneath that shifting behavior is something simple and human. They are adjusting to the reality that you matter more to them than they expected. What makes this stage even more revealing are the small, almost invisible signs that start appearing. These signs don't always look dramatic. They are subtle, quiet, easy to miss if you aren't paying attention. For example, they might check their phone more often than usual, wondering if you've sent a message. They might revisit old conversations in their mind, replaying moments where you laughed together or shared something meaningful. Even if they don't reach out constantly, their awareness of you remains present. They might scroll through your social media without saying anything. They might notice when something in your life changes. They remember details about your day, your interests, your preferences. These small acts of attention reveal something important. Their curiosity about you is growing, and curiosity is often the early stage of emotional attachment for someone who usually keeps their feelings guarded. Another sign appears in the way they communicate when they do reach out. Even if their messages are short or casual, there is often an effort behind them. They choose their words carefully. They check in unexpectedly. Sometimes they reach out just to share something small that reminded them of you. These moments may seem ordinary, but they reveal something deeper. You are becoming part of their internal world, part of their daily awareness. And once someone enters that space in the mind of an avoidant person, it's rarely accidental. It usually means their emotional focus has quietly shifted toward you. So when an avoidant says certain words that sound distant, it's important to look beyond the surface of the sentence. Because in many cases, those words appear precisely at the moment their feelings are beginning to deepen. The intensity surprises them. The connection feels unfamiliar in its depth. And instead of expressing that directly, they create space to understand it. Yet within that space, their thoughts often return to you again and again. This is the quiet beginning of something powerful, not the loud, dramatic kind of obsession that announces itself immediately, but the slow, psychological kind that grows through reflection and emotional discovery. It begins when someone who is used to emotional independence realizes they can't easily stop thinking about one particular person. It begins when your presence starts influencing their mood, their thoughts, and their curiosity about the future. And although they may not say it openly at first, the truth is already forming beneath the surface. The connection has entered deeper than they expected. And once that happens, everything inside them begins to change in ways even they didn't see coming. And once that quiet shift begins inside them, something deeper starts unfolding beneath the surface. Because the truth is, the reason avoidant individuals struggle with powerful connection is not because they don't feel deeply. In many cases, it's the opposite. They often feel emotions intensely, but they learned early on that expressing those emotions openly can create vulnerability they aren't prepared to handle. Somewhere in their past, closeness may have felt unpredictable or overwhelming, so their mind developed a protective system designed to keep emotional distance. Over time, that system becomes automatic. It becomes the way they navigate relationships, keeping one foot slightly outside the emotional door. But when someone enters their life who begins to bypass that system, something unfamiliar happens. They start to feel the depth of connection they usually avoid. And that depth can feel both beautiful and frightening at the same time. Beautiful because it awakens parts of them that have been quiet for a long time. Frightening because it challenges the independence they've relied on to feel safe. Real connection has a way of reaching places inside a person that they thought were protected. It asks them to trust. It asks them to be seen. And for someone who has spent years maintaining emotional control, that request can feel like stepping into unknown territory. So when they begin to feel that depth forming with you, their mind doesn't always celebrate it immediately. Sometimes it pauses. Sometimes it hesitates. Sometimes it tries to slow things down so they can understand what's happening inside them. Because they know that once real connection forms, it changes the way they experience the world. Suddenly another person's presence matters. Suddenly another person's absence is noticed. And that shift can feel overwhelming for someone who is used to standing emotionally on their own. There is also a moment that often happens quietly, without dramatic announcements, where they begin to realize something about you that surprises them. At first, they may treat the connection like any other interaction in their life. They remain casual. They stay relaxed. They keep their emotional distance. But as time passes, they start noticing small differences. Conversations with you feel easier than expected. They find themselves opening up in ways they normally wouldn't. They might share thoughts, stories, or feelings that they usually keep private. And afterward, they might even feel slightly confused by their own behavior. They might think, why did I say that? Or why do I feel so comfortable around this person? These moments are important because they represent the beginning of emotional recognition. Their mind starts realizing that this connection feels different from others they've experienced before. You become someone who creates a sense of safety they didn't expect, someone who doesn't push them too quickly, yet somehow draws honesty out of them naturally. And that realization can quietly change the way they see you. Instead of being just another person in their life, you become someone who occupies a unique emotional space, someone they feel unusually calm with, someone they trust more than they planned to. And once that awareness forms, it often marks the beginning of a deeper internal attachment. One of the clearest signs of this shift appears in a simple sentence that might seem ordinary at first. They might say something like, "I don't usually talk about this," or "I don't normally open up like this with people." When those words appear, they reveal something significant happening beneath the surface, because for someone who guards their emotions carefully, admitting that they are sharing something personal is not casual. It means you have entered a level of emotional access that few people reach. It means their protective walls have lowered, even if only slightly. And for avoidant individuals, lowering those walls is not easy. It requires a sense of trust that develops slowly and often without them realizing it at first. That single sentence carries an unspoken meaning. You are becoming important to them. They may not say it directly, but by acknowledging that they are opening up in ways they normally don't, they are quietly revealing the impact you have on them. It shows that something about your presence makes them feel safe enough to let parts of themselves be seen. And when an avoidant person reaches that stage, it often means their emotional attachment is growing stronger than they expected. But here is where the paradox of avoidant behavior becomes most confusing for people on the outside. Because the closer they begin to feel, the more their protective instincts can activate again. Just when the connection seems to be deepening, they may suddenly pull back slightly. They may become quieter. They may slow down communication. And to someone who doesn't understand the internal process, this can feel like rejection or loss of interest. But what is often happening internally is something very different. The closeness they just experienced has awakened emotions they are not used to managing. After opening up, they may begin reflecting on what it means. They may wonder whether they move too quickly emotionally. They may question whether becoming attached could eventually lead to vulnerability or disappointment, so their mind attempts to restore balance by creating a little distance again. It is not because they stopped caring, it is because caring suddenly became very real. And when caring becomes real for someone who is used to independence, it can feel overwhelming. They are not pushing away the connection itself, they are trying to regulate the intensity of the emotions forming inside them. During this time, something fascinating often begins to happen quietly behind the scenes. Even if their outward behavior becomes calmer or more reserved, their internal attention toward you continues to grow. They may not speak about it openly, but their mind keeps returning to thoughts about you. They wonder how your day is going. They notice when something reminds them of you. Sometimes they even catch themselves smiling at a memory from a conversation you shared. These small mental moments reveal something powerful. You are beginning to occupy emotional space in their life. And for someone who is used to maintaining distance from deep attachment, that realization can feel surprising. They might not fully understand why they keep thinking about you. They might not even admit it to themselves immediately. But their attention toward you continues to appear in subtle ways. They may watch quietly from the background of your life, observing how you move through the world. They might check whether you've posted something new online or shared an update about your day. It isn't about control or obsession in the dramatic sense. It's about curiosity mixed with growing emotional awareness. Your presence has become meaningful to them in a way they didn't anticipate. This quiet observation is something many avoidant individuals do naturally when they start caring about someone. Instead of expressing their feelings directly, they gather information through distance. They watch how you respond to situations. They notice your reactions to challenges, your sense of humor, your kindness toward others. Every small detail becomes part of a mental picture they are forming about you. And while they may appear calm or detached on the surface, internally they are learning about you in ways that feel deeply personal. Sometimes they may even test small forms of communication just to stay connected without appearing too emotionally involved. They might send a brief message asking how you are. They might react to something you shared. They might reach out unexpectedly with a simple thought or question. These moments are rarely random. They are often quiet ways of maintaining connection while still protecting their emotional independence. And if you look closely, you may notice a pattern. Even after moments of distance, they find subtle ways to return. They check in again. They reconnect in small ways. And each time they do, it reveals something important. Despite their need for space, the connection with you continues to live in their mind. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of avoidant behavior. People often assume that distance means disinterest, but in many cases, distance is simply the way avoidant individuals process emotional intensity. While they step back externally, their internal world continues exploring the meaning of the connection. They reflect on conversations you've had. They remember the way you made them feel during certain moments. And slowly, almost quietly, their emotional attachment becomes stronger. Not in a loud or obvious way, but in the subtle way that thoughts begin returning to the same person again and again. Over time, those thoughts create familiarity. Familiarity creates comfort, and comfort begins transforming the connection into something they value more deeply than they expected. What makes this stage so powerful is that they often don't fully realize what's happening until it has already begun shaping their emotional world. They may start noticing that your absence feels different from anyone else's. If they go a few days without hearing from you, they think about it. If they see something that reminds them of you, they feel the urge to share it. These are small signals, but they reveal something meaningful. Your presence has begun leaving an imprint in their mind, and once that imprint forms, it becomes difficult to ignore. Even when they try to focus on other aspects of their life, you remain somewhere in the background of their awareness, not loudly demanding attention, but quietly existing in a space that continues drawing their thoughts back to you. And this is where something remarkable begins to take shape. Because when an avoidant person starts paying attention to someone in this quiet, reflective way, It often means their feelings are evolving beyond casual interest. They may not label it immediately, they may not express it openly, but internally, they are beginning to acknowledge that this connection matters more than they originally believed. And once that realization starts forming, it slowly begins to influence their decisions, their attention, and their emotional focus. Without realizing it, they are moving closer to a truth they once tried to avoid. The truth that someone has entered their life in a way that feels meaningful, memorable, and increasingly difficult to ignore. And once that realization begins forming inside them, something even more interesting starts to happen. The connection may no longer be something they can simply place in the background of their life. Instead, it begins appearing in unexpected moments, almost like a quiet presence following them through their daily routine. They might be going through a normal day, focusing on work or responsibilities, and suddenly something reminds them of you. A phrase you once said, a small joke you shared, a song that somehow brings back a memory of a conversation. These moments seem simple on the surface, but for someone who is used to emotional independence, they can feel surprisingly powerful, because each reminder reinforces the same quiet realization: you are occupying space in their mind. And the more this happens, the more curious they become about the connection itself. Instead of openly expressing their growing attachment, they often choose to observe from a distance. Watching becomes their way of staying connected without exposing too much of what they feel. They may look at your social media updates without saying anything. They may notice changes in your mood, your activities, your routines. Sometimes they even remember small details about your life that you mentioned casually weeks ago. To an outside observer, it might seem like simple curiosity, but internally, it reveals something deeper. Their mind is collecting pieces of who you are, quietly learning about you in ways that feel meaningful to them. They may not say it out loud, but every time they pay attention to those small details, they are investing emotional energy into the connection. This quiet attention often surprises them, because avoidant individuals are used to feeling emotionally self-contained. They are comfortable with their independence. They don't usually spend much time analyzing how another person moves through the world. But with you, something feels different. Your presence triggers a level of awareness they didn't expect. They notice the way you respond to challenges. They notice the way you speak about the people you care about. They notice how you handle moments of vulnerability or joy. And each observation adds another layer to the picture they are forming in their mind. Slowly, your personality becomes familiar to them, not in a superficial way, but in a way that feels emotionally personal. And that familiarity creates a quiet attachment they may not immediately recognize. Because the more they learn about you, the more their mind returns to the same question: why does this person feel different? Why does this connection stay in my thoughts longer than the others? These questions don't always have immediate answers, but the fact that they keep appearing shows that the emotional impact of the connection is growing. At the same time, something else begins happening internally. While they observe you from a distance, they are also experiencing an emotional conflict that can be difficult to explain even to themselves. On one side of their mind is the desire for closeness. The moments they shared with you felt real, comfortable, even exciting in a quiet way. Part of them wants to continue exploring that connection, to see where it might lead, but on the other side is the familiar instinct that has protected them for years, the instinct that says closeness can create vulnerability, the instinct that warns them not to rely too heavily on anyone. These two forces begin pulling in opposite directions inside them. One side is drawn toward you, curious about the possibilities of deeper connection. The other side is cautious, reminding them of the emotional risks that come with letting someone matter. This internal tension can create moments where their behavior seems inconsistent. One day they might feel open, warm, and engaged with you. Another day they might feel the need to step back and regain emotional balance. It is not because their feelings disappeared overnight. It is because they are navigating a psychological tug-of-war between connection and protection. This inner conflict often becomes stronger as their feelings grow, because the more they care, the more real the stakes become. Caring about someone means that person now has the power to influence your emotions. Their absence can be felt, their words can affect your mood, their presence can bring comfort or excitement. For someone who is used to maintaining emotional control, this realization can feel overwhelming. They may begin asking themselves difficult questions. What if this connection becomes too intense? What if they become too attached? What if they lose the independence they've always relied on? These questions do not necessarily mean they want to leave the connection. In fact, the very reason these questions appear is because the connection has become meaningful enough to matter. When someone doesn't care, they rarely spend time analyzing emotional risks. But when someone starts imagining the future impact of a connection, it means that connection has already entered deeper layers of their awareness. During this stage, subtle changes in their behavior often begin to appear. They may start engaging in longer conversations than before. Instead of brief exchanges, they allow discussions to unfold more naturally. Sometimes they even share pieces of their inner world that they normally keep private. Small confessions, honest reflections, personal thoughts they wouldn't usually reveal to many people. These moments might seem spontaneous, but they are actually important signals of growing trust. Opening up emotionally is not easy for someone who values independence so strongly. Yet with you, they begin allowing small glimpses into their thoughts and experiences. These glimpses might appear unexpectedly, almost as if the words slipped out before they had time to guard them. And afterward, they might even feel slightly surprised by their own openness. But those moments reveal something meaningful. You are slowly becoming someone they feel safe sharing themselves with. Sometimes this growing closeness also appears through eye contact or body language during moments you spend together. They might look at you a little longer than before. Their attention might linger when you speak. You may notice them listening carefully, remembering things you said days or weeks earlier. These are not dramatic gestures, but they carry emotional weight because attention is one of the most honest forms of connection. When someone consistently pays attention to you, it means their mind values your presence. And for an avoidant person who is used to keeping emotional distance, that kind of attention represents a quiet shift toward attachment. However, just as this closeness begins forming, another confusing moment may appear. There may be times when they suddenly become quieter again. Messages slow down, conversations pause, they seem to disappear for a short period without clear explanation. For many people experiencing this, it can feel painful or discouraging. It may look like the connection is fading or losing importance, but in many cases, silence from an avoidant person does not mean indifference. Silence is often their way of processing emotions they don't fully understand yet. When their feelings start becoming intense, they may step back internally to reflect. They think about what the connection means. They analyze their own reactions. They try to understand why this person has begun occupying such a significant space in their thoughts. During this reflection period, they may avoid communicating too frequently because they don't want to reveal confusion or vulnerability before they fully understand it themselves. Inside their mind, these quiet periods are rarely empty. They are filled with reflection. They replay conversations you shared. They remember the moments where they felt especially comfortable with you. They think about how their life feels slightly different now that you are part of it. Sometimes these reflections lead to surprising realizations. They notice that even during silence, you remain present in their thoughts. Even when they try to focus on other things, your memory returns in small ways. And slowly, they begin recognizing something they didn't plan for. Your presence has become emotionally significant to them. As this awareness grows, another behavior sometimes begins to appear. They may start testing the emotional environment of the connection, not in a manipulative way, but in a cautious way that helps them understand whether it is safe to become more attached. For example, they might create small moments of distance and watch how you respond. They observe whether you react with patience, understanding, or pressure. They might ask subtle questions that reveal how you view relationships or emotional closeness. These tests are rarely obvious. Often, they are simple interactions designed to measure emotional safety, because before they allow themselves to move closer, they want to know whether the connection can exist without threatening their sense of independence. These moments of testing can be confusing if you don't understand what's happening. It may seem like they are unsure or inconsistent, but internally, they are gathering information about whether the connection feels stable and secure. They are learning whether being close to you will create peace or emotional chaos. And if they begin to sense that the connection is safe, something important begins to change inside them. Their fear slowly softens. Their curiosity becomes stronger than their hesitation. The part of them that wants closeness starts gaining confidence, and once that shift begins, the connection starts moving toward a turning point they never expected. A moment where their guard, which once felt necessary for protection, slowly begins lowering in ways even they didn't imagine. And when that shift finally begins inside them, something remarkable starts unfolding in ways that even they may not fully understand at first. For a long time, their emotional guard has been like a quiet shield, something that helped them feel safe and in control. It allowed them to keep connections at a distance, where vulnerability could not easily reach them. But now something is changing. Slowly, almost without realizing it, that shield begins to lower, not completely at once, and not in a dramatic way. Instead, it happens through small moments that carry quiet significance. A longer conversation than usual, a message sent just to check on you, a moment where they reveal a thought or feeling that they normally keep hidden. These gestures may seem simple, but for someone who has spent years protecting their emotional independence, they represent something powerful. They are signs that trust is beginning to grow, trust that this connection might be different, trust that maybe being close to someone doesn't always mean losing yourself. And the more these small moments appear, the more they begin realizing that their guard is no longer as necessary as it once felt. You become someone who doesn't threaten their independence, but instead adds something meaningful to their life. And once they start recognizing that feeling, the connection enters a completely new stage. At this stage, they may begin showing up in ways that feel more consistent than before. They initiate conversations more naturally. They become more curious about your life, asking questions not just out of politeness, but out of genuine interest. They want to know what you're thinking, what you're experiencing, what matters to you, and as these conversations unfold, something else quietly begins happening. They start imagining you as part of their future in small ways, not necessarily grand plans or dramatic declarations, but simple thoughts that appear unexpectedly, wondering what it would be like to share certain experiences with you, thinking about places they would enjoy visiting with you, imagining how you might react to moments in their life that are important to them. These thoughts may surprise them at first, because for someone who has spent a long time focusing mainly on their own independence, imagining another person woven into their future can feel unfamiliar. Yet the fact that these thoughts appear at all reveals how deeply the connection has begun influencing their inner world. Then comes another powerful moment that many people don't recognize immediately. It happens when they begin to feel your absence more clearly than before. Maybe a few days pass without hearing from you. Maybe the rhythm of communication changes slightly. Suddenly something inside them notices. The quiet presence you had in their life becomes more visible when it is temporarily gone. They start wondering how you are. They check their phone more often than usual. They think about reaching out, even if they hesitate for a moment before doing so. This is often the stage where they begin realizing something important about their feelings. Missing someone is a powerful emotional signal. It reveals attachment in a way that words sometimes cannot. And for someone who once believed they were perfectly comfortable maintaining emotional distance, noticing that they miss you can feel like a surprising discovery. It tells them that your presence has become meaningful in ways they didn't expect. During these moments, memories of the connection often become stronger. They recall the way you laughed at certain jokes. They remember the calm feeling they had during your conversations. They think about the way you listened when they shared something personal. These memories begin creating a quiet emotional warmth inside them, and that warmth makes them want to reconnect, not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire. They start realizing that interacting with you brings something positive into their life, something that feels comfortable, genuine, and emotionally grounding. And as that awareness grows, their motivation to maintain the connection becomes stronger than the instinct to distance themselves. Yet even as their feelings deepen, something about their communication may still feel confusing if you are only listening to the surface of their words. Avoidant individuals often struggle to express emotions in direct, dramatic language. They may not say things like, "I'm falling deeply for you," or "You mean everything to me." Instead, their words might sound simpler, more casual, sometimes even slightly guarded. They might say something like, "I enjoy talking with you," or "You're easy to be around," or "I don't usually feel this comfortable with people." To someone unfamiliar with avoidant communication, these sentences may seem small, but in reality, they carry significant emotional meaning. Because for someone who rarely admits emotional attachment openly, acknowledging comfort, trust, or enjoyment with another person is often their way of expressing deeper feelings indirectly. Their actions during this stage often reveal more than their words. They begin making time for you even when their schedule is busy. They remember details you shared earlier and bring them up later. They show concern when you are going through something difficult. These behaviors demonstrate emotional investment in ways that cannot easily be hidden. Attention, consistency, and curiosity are all signs that someone is becoming emotionally connected. And when an avoidant person begins showing these behaviors repeatedly, it often means their feelings have moved far beyond casual interest. Eventually, there is one behavior that reveals the depth of their attachment more clearly than anything else. It is something that happens again and again in avoidant connections. No matter how much distance appears at times, they continue finding their way back to you. Even after moments of silence, they reappear. Even after periods of reflection, they reconnect. Something about the connection continues pulling their attention in your direction. This returning behavior is powerful because it shows that you occupy a lasting place in their emotional world. When someone repeatedly returns to the same person, despite their instinct to maintain independence, it means the connection has become important enough to overcome their natural tendency toward distance. This is often the stage where the truth becomes impossible for them to ignore. They may not use dramatic language to describe it, but internally they recognize that you have become someone significant in their life, someone who changed their usual patterns, someone who made them question the emotional walls they built for protection. And perhaps most importantly, someone who showed them that connection does not always have to feel overwhelming or threatening. Sometimes it can feel supportive, calm, and meaningful at the same time. Loving someone with avoidant tendencies can sometimes feel confusing because their emotional language is quieter than most people expect. They rarely reveal everything all at once. Instead, their feelings unfold slowly through patterns of behavior, small confessions, moments of attention, and the simple act of continuing to return to the connection. But when you learn to see those signals, something beautiful becomes clear. Beneath the distance and hesitation is often a person who feels deeply, but learned to protect those feelings carefully. And when they meet someone who understands their pace, someone who allows connection to grow without pressure, something powerful can happen. The walls they once believed were necessary begin to soften. The independence they valued so strongly starts making room for companionship. And the person who once feared emotional closeness begins discovering that caring for someone does not mean losing themselves. It simply means allowing another person to matter. So when an avoidant says certain words that seem distant on the surface, it is important to look beyond the literal meaning, because sometimes those words appear at the exact moment their feelings are becoming strongest. Sometimes the person who seems the most careful about connection is also the one thinking about you the most when you are not around. And sometimes the quietest expressions of emotion carry the deepest truth. The truth that the connection has already entered their mind, their attention, and slowly, without them even realizing it at first, their heart as well.